Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of Shafter City Council to order Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Let the record show all members of the council are present. Asking Councilmember Lopez to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and Councilmember Alvarado in the invocation.
Sam. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Watching over us and ask the Lord to continue knowledge and understanding.
What do you need?
The extra green paper.
Oh, she took them up.
Oh, yeah, you took one.
They pulled it. They pulled it. Okay, the first item is the Kern County Public Works Department countywide proposed increase to the land use fee in the presentation. It's not on. Oh, I missed it. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to approve the agenda and there's no other changes on the agenda.
I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda as read.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez to approve the agenda, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Givens.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Kraut.
Yes. Now we'll go to the presentation for Kern County Public Works Department for the countywide proposed increase to the land use fee.
Hi, this is Lynn Brooks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here with Mr. Pope. You might can see him in the background. We're here to talk to you about a proposal that we have to handle illegal dumping in the county. And so I'm going to share my screen so that we can go through the PowerPoint if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to see my PowerPoint?
We can see you.
Oh, dang it. You can't see the PowerPoint?
Not yet. No.
Oh, wait a minute. I got to hit the share button. Sorry. Now?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Perfect. We do Teams here, and so I'm not as familiar with Zoom, but hopefully we can power through it. So our first slide here is about, illegal dumping. We all know we have a lot of it. It's a persistent problem all through the county with the negative impacts of, environmental, public health, economic, and social and economic issues. Some of the environmental impacts are that, some of it contains hazardous substances and chemicals that could cause damage to the soil, air, and groundwater, and can pollute natural habitats and cause death to the wildlife. There's public health impacts, breeding ground for mosquitoes and other insects, and animals and pets can get into it. It has economic impacts as well. It's a detrimental effect on businesses, customers not wanting to visit businesses with illegal dumping nearby. The value of homes with illegal dumping also decrease. Costs a lot of money to clean up and repair damage. And you know what? It's just ugly. So what do we currently do here at Kern County? We have the Keep Kern Beautiful program, which we just launched, in the last few months. We also have our Keep Kern Roads Clean program, and we have done in the past, not as many during the COVID time, but we have done a lot of community cleanups with all of the cities and in the county areas. Right now we have 14 landfills and transfer stations, and we have a lot of operating hours. I mean, there's something open 7 days a week. We have 3 special waste facilities, and we also do mobile collection events. We have our bulky waste events that are very popular. And we also have the curbside bulky waste pickup program. The county has programs as well as the cities. And we have one small illegal dumping crew right now, but that isn't enough. I mean, we still have a tremendous problem with illegal dumping. So how can we make it better? This is something that comes to Public Works all the time. And people ask us to do something about it. So we have established an ordinance to establish fines. It is an administrative fine, not not through the justice system. We can do more education and community outreach. We do a lot, but we could do more. And we could do more cleanup. We could have more county crews stationed throughout the county to attack the problem. And we can have the cities increase their efforts on cleanup within their programs. But the problem is we need money. We would anticipate it to make a significant difference in what's going on, that we would need 5 crews. We would station 2 in the metro area, and those areas include Lamont and the Arvin, Oildale, that area. 1 on the east side, 1 on the west side, and 1 in the Shafter McFarland area. And we would also use our franchise haulers when appropriate. The land use fee is a fee that's on every occupied residential parcel through the county. The land use fee was never calculated to include a component for illegal dumping. Currently, a single family home is charged on their tax roll $82.89. Apartments are $66.30. And these are applied through all the residential properties throughout the county, and including the ones in the city. That fee has not been increased since 2012. And so what we're proposing as an option to deal with illegal dumping is to increase the fee to cover the cost of additional crews and additional programs that might want to be instituted by the cities. And as we thought about it, we were trying to figure out what would be a good way to portion out the revenues that we would receive from that. And since we are talking about only illegal dumping within public right-of-ways, not a code compliance issue, because that's a separate problem, we look to the state for the maintained mileage. And so this slide that I'm showing here is a list of the miles and what percentage in Kern County that those miles are in each city. And so for Shafter, you guys have 98 maintained miles, and that's 1.8% of the total mileage in Kern County. So what we're proposing is to increase the land use fee $22.11 for single family homes, and that would take it from $82.89 to $105, and increase apartments from up $17.70 from $66.30 to $84. And of course, a Prop 218 process would be required. This table shows how much the funds, how many dollars each city would get, as well as the county. So this would provide revenues to the unincorporated Kern County of $3.7 million. The other big one is the city of Bakersfield. They obviously have a large percentage of the maintained mileage, Kern County being 59.5, Bakersfield 23.7, and Shafter 1.8. which puts Shafter receiving $114,531 from this program. You could, do whatever you wanted to with that money, towards illegal dumping. There would be no oversight by the county on it. You would just choose to implement whatever programs that you wanted to. So as we thought about we were, mapping a path. So we discussed it at our Solid Waste Management Advisory Committee meeting. From that, nobody else had a lot of great ideas about how to deal with illegal dumping. So they suggested that we parse out a subcommittee. So we met with them, threw this idea out to the group. Again, everybody has mixed reactions. I mean, it is a lot of money. It is, a rough time. But the problem seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we decided that we would reach out to the cities like we're doing tonight and get feedback from the cities. And then based on the outcome of that, we would begin the Prop 218 process and then conduct, we'd send out mailers and then conduct virtual community meetings. And then if all that goes well, then the Board of Supervisors would vote on it sometime in May, and it would be inactive and effective July 2021. And so Mr. Pope and I are here to take your questions and your comments, and we'll be happy to answer anything that we can. I'm not sure how to get back.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there anyone in the council has any comments at this time?
Are there use restrictions on the money that's received?
You want to take that?
Yeah, our goal was to proportion it out as we showed you, and the only use restriction that is based on how it's generated, and that's under the land use fee for garbage. So anything you do with garbage, and I would, my personal preference is somewhere between where it's generated and where it makes it into the landfill is the use of it. So any kind of litter pickup, any kind of illegal dump cleanup, any kind of homeless encampment cleanup that's in the public right of way, all those would be available for the money would be available for your use. Our intention is that, this is an approximation of the amount, whatever it comes out by the proportion shown, we'll just cut you the check and it'll be up to you to decide how to use it.
That fee is a per mile. I guess I'm looking at you, Mike. That fee is a per mile. But if it's a cost per house / apartment, or a fee increase per house or per apartment, is there a difference between the two? It feels like the calculation on a per mile may be different than the calculation on a per home / apartment.
Yeah, we did a quick calc for Shafter. And Lynn, do you have the numbers there?
I do. The city of Shafter has 5,270 residents that pay into the land use fee. So that's a mix of single family and apartments. So that would be roughly $104,000 if you just got it per resident. Per residential parcel. So you're actually coming out a little bit ahead using the maintain mileage system.
And what happens with the growth that comes along?
The growth, as you accept more maintained miles into your system?
Well, in housing.
We're looking at what, another 400 homes, 400 to 500 homes coming in this year? So what happens after that?
If we maintain this system as the apportionment mechanism, then if you accepted more maintained mileage into your system, for example, if there's subdivisions and you accept those roads into your system and that increases that, then that would increase how much money you would receive each year. I had a question from your city manager when we did a quick Zoom call, and his question was, will the county assist the cities in this and in illegal dumping? I think we've been participatory in a lot of community events and that sort of thing, and also being able to accept illegal dumping and no charge at the landfill. All of those things, I think that we would certainly continue to work with all of the cities on, trying to implement these programs, and whatever you choose to do, we certainly would be willing to participate in any ideas, programs, or anything that you guys would like us to help with.
Yeah, we're looking for feedback from you because I think we're all in this together. We all got this problem and it seems like it's getting worse by the day. And our farming community, I mean, we all are part of that. And I see them as hit as hard as anybody because they don't know how to deal with it. And so we're just trying in the county here, we're trying to develop a mechanism that will help that. And is it the ultimate solution? No, it's just, is it a fair solution? I think so. Best we can tell by looking at the numbers, it seemed relatively fair to everybody. And the fact that we're going to continue to work with the cities on joint projects, on community cleanups and stuff. That's where the real bang is when the community gets behind it and we get groups of people out there cleaning up and we get it picked up and hauled to the landfills. It really makes a difference. That's where we seem to get the biggest bang.
You know, Craig, you realize that we're known as a disadvantaged community as well as many of the others in our Kern County group. And it seems like the timing isn't the best. I don't know if there's ever a good timing, but we're going to look at required mandates on 1383 with Cal Recycling. We just finished a workshop on that and it's going to cost people. And we already know, and we've already discussed how we're going to deal with it because it isn't a fee that we, the city, is putting on them, and yet we're all going to have to pay in it. And so we just wonder what the response might be for us out here, especially because we will hear it directly.
Yeah, and that's why we're here talking. We realize that, and we don't want to unfairly burden anybody. What our intention is to hear from as many people as we can, take a report back to the board when I think it's March 23rd. We will be setting a hearing date if we're going to move ahead on the 218 process, and we'll talk to the board and tell them what we've heard. I mean, there have been several communities that are very supportive of it because they don't have any other answers. But we've heard from chapter that this is a rough time to be doing it, and we understand that.
Well, and if you have a lot of cities that don't participate, then what does it do to this whole plan?
It's up to the board members.
Okay.
Where we're going to present as much information as we can to the board. And if they say move it through to the 218 process, and then it is up then to our citizens, if it is a, what do we call it?
Protest.
It's a protest hearing. So it'd take a very large portion of the population to come out against it. But if it goes into effect, even if you didn't necessarily want it, the money would come your way. It's not like, you said no and don't want it. It'd still be coming your direction. But it's up to our board.
We already spend extra within our own community that we do alley cleanups and residential cleanups. We do that already just to help out our appearance of the city as well as with all of our residents and building the responsibility back on them. And I feel like within our city, we've done a good job. It didn't happen overnight. We've had to work on it for a long, long time. And so I don't know how I can address the bigger county area because you can hide it a whole lot more by just dumping it, or as I said earlier, maybe it blows off of the back of their truck, who knows? Because when they dump out in the rural areas, it's pretty rough to know who did it. So I don't know if you could delay it, if we can be just part of the suggestion. We do have an agenda item on it, as you probably know, and we may have more discussion at that time, but it's going to be a tough one to make that decision tonight to decide we'd be part of this.
And our goal really was just to get the information out to you to make sure you were aware of what we were thinking and just get your concept of. We're not looking for a vote necessarily. We wanted to hear from you. If you do a vote on it, please send us the results. If it's tonight, That's great. If not, anything you got, we'll be carrying forward to the board.
Well, I sat in on the solid waste, and I believe even our public works was there, that the one day when it came out with the committee, I don't remember the lady's name, but, and I should, but anyway, I understand the county-wide issue and I understand the reasoning to get behind it, but I don't know that I'm ready to say we're going to have to put some more money into it and ask our citizens. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Lynn. Does your community have any other ideas? Because we're just trying to brainstorm how we can improve the situation. How preventing it, that might be a stretch, but besides more money, is there anything that you think that we can do to minimize the problem that we're having?
Well, even before on Cal Recycle, we talked about how we have to continually educate, and yet some of them are still going to go against the education part. I mean, that's just human nature, I suppose, but education is one. And then once you have groups, because even at COG, you know, we have a certain amount that goes towards the cleanup there where they use people to go up and down the roads and pick up stuff. And you have to continue some of those existing programs that you already have and not get into this one, especially today. I know maybe you have to wait till next January and let's see what we can do then.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, through you, can I ask a couple
Yes,
questions?
sir.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, Craig.
Good evening.
Appreciate both of you being on. Quick question, and I just want to kind of add to what Mayor Pro Tem Givens, I think, was asking about the number of homes still be constructed. If the methodology is based on maintained miles, we have infill subdivisions planned for the city on existing roads, which would probably already be included in those 98 miles that we're receiving monies. So what we're going to find is that the number of units in Shafter are more than the maintained miles. In other words, we're going to continue to add homes, but our revenue we're going to get from the county is going to be the same because our maintained miles aren't increasing. So is there any consideration that if you do move forward, there's some other basis to account for the number of additional units a city may actually develop than the maintained miles?
I think, first of all, whatever method we come up with will have to be how we write it up and how we share it with the public. So to change that would be something that would require another 218 process, another whole change of what it is we're doing. Our goal on the maintained mileage is that's where the work is. It's the number of miles of road that are out there is what you have to go clean up. It's not by the individual home, because I think in the county anyway, we're out there in that farmland. I'm looking at one farmhouse and I'm looking at this stretch of miles of road that he's responsible for, and it's not coming from one parcel. It seems to be the work is related to the number of miles of road versus the amount of work. So that's due to each individual parcel. So that's our nexus. One other thought we're having is with 1383 coming up, we'll probably be going to more mandatory collection areas. In other words, the people will not have an option of signing up for a service. They'll be required to have a service during certain population densities. The more urban areas, they are going to be required to have mandatory pickup. With mandatory pickup, we hope we're going to see a decrease in the illegal dumping, because we suspect that a lot of this stuff is just for people that don't have service. So hopefully with higher densities, more homes per area, more mandatory collection areas, we might even see a reduction in the amount generated.
Craig, any consideration, some cities have alleys that we still maintain, and that's where a lot of the illegal dumping takes place. Any consideration to add the total mileage, whatever those alleys add up to include in the maintained miles?
We looked at that briefly, but it ends up kicking even more money towards the county of Kern, because we have a whole bunch of them too. It didn't really change the distribution too much, other than it seemed like the county even ended up with more, and that's not our goal. Our goal is to try and keep the cities as partners, and we don't want to come up with a method that maximizes the amount of money for us.
And then another question is, any consideration that instead of the cities receiving, Shafter 114,000, I think I saw TAF for like 44,000 or something like that. Any consideration that the county run this program and they hire the crews, and those crews are the ones that go out into the cities by region? So for example, county crews will come out to Shafter, McFarland, Wasco, versus the cities trying to hire their own staff and incurring the O&M expense that goes with a program like this?
Well, we thought about it a little bit, but I don't know that the amount of money we're generating will take care of the problem. And I think then we'd run into a problem of prioritization. I mean, we're going to have a bunch of customers, meaning the cities, that are never satisfied with what we're doing. So we figured it'd be better just to leave it up to them to put the money where they saw it doing the most good. They could hire people to do it. We've heard proposals to hire the homeless and things like that. That's all a possibility. So we'd rather see the cities take their money and put it towards where they have their priorities. And because if we develop a program for the whole county, I can guarantee you some will be happy and some will not. So it doesn't help too much. So we'd prefer stay with the cities so they can put it where they need to.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't the program already show that McFarland Shafter area will have a crew assigned to them?
Yes, it's not this for the city limits. It'll just be in that general area.
So general area, county general area, city and county combined.
It's the county area in that region, but that crew would then work with the various cities up there also to help on, like we said, big events, community cleanup events, things like that. It's not to go, we're not going to draw a hard line at city limits, but it's not to take care of the cities in those areas.
And then Craig, just a final question to clarify, in our meeting with Lynn and Lisa, it was mentioned to us that the Prop 218 process would start this month, but you made a comment that the Board of Supervisors would still have to decide whether to initiate the Prop 218 process or not. So I just want to clarify what that.
Yeah, March 23rd, I believe, is the date we're going to go to the board to ask to set a hearing date for the 218. That's the official kickoff. I will have a little brief discussion on that date. Normally, we just do it as a consent item, but in this case, it's enough that we should talk about it one more time. And if the board opts not to go at that point, it's done. If they do, then we start officially kicking off the 218 process and do the mail outs and all that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question. My name is Pete. I work on a 2,000 acre ranch, and this is almost a daily chore going around picking things up. From my perspective, it's more of it's not that they don't have service, it's that they don't want to pay for it and they're going to go throw it anyway. And there's no fear of the fact of them being caught because they just go out and dump it anywhere, any place, anytime. So this, I mean, if all we're going to do is turn around and keep cleaning up after them, we're not going to fix the problem. I think we're trying to catch the cat by the tail. So the part needs to be education, and it needs to be explained that it's not acceptable and it's not the thing to be doing. And if they are caught, there is a punishment. Because I'll tell you right now, it is a growing problem because like I said, it's almost a daily occurrence. But I don't think going around and picking up behind them is going to fix the problem. And the thing for the county coming by and picking it up, we don't wait for that. As soon as we see it, we pick it up. And so we're not waiting for a county vehicle to come by to pick up the trash, because if that was the case, the place would look like a junkyard in just a matter of weeks.
Pete, I think you make a lot of good points, and we don't disagree with you. This money could be used for education. Can we do that? We're doing a lot of education now, and really we haven't found it to be doing anything. I would love it if we could educate people and get them to stop. I'd spend nothing but time doing that.
We've even gone to the point to where we've kind of rummaged through the trash And we found names on envelopes and mail and addresses and stuff like that. We contacted the sheriff's department, and what we got from the sheriff's department was basically that they couldn't do anything about it.
And that's the same story we get, and even beyond the sheriff's department is the DA. So it's tough to make that line of action have any merit. They just don't act on it. That's why we're trying to figure it out. I mean, we're all ears to take any new ideas, to take these thoughts and work them. We agree with you. I mean,
I think it's more going to be a generational problem. The people that are doing it are basically not going to stop doing it. So it needs to be a project that you just keep reinforcing it into people's heads, so it finally starts to soak in to where they realize that it's not the proper thing to do.
Yeah.
I just had something to mention, just to, for example, we have an area on West Tulare that says no dumping and people are dumping. So I guess the way this will stop is the consequences. What kind of consequences if they get caught? And I think that goes part of what you were saying. If there's no consequences, you're not going to fix the problem. And even in the city limits, I'm not sure what is the consequences if you get caught dumping what says don't dump. You know, and if that is not enforced, or it's not something that it's going to cost the person dumping, because I think a lot of it's free if you just take it down to the landfill, right? So, you know, I don't know whether it's a bad habit. We've created a bad habit, or the people have created a bad habit. And because there's no consequences, you're not going to fix it. Or penalty, depending on what type of penalty. So.
Okay, did you have anything else you need to give us tonight? No?
That's it.
Well, appreciate your efforts too, because I know that this is affecting everybody. And so we will continue to at least work within our area and hope that they can respond, because we have to do that within the core area too. It's been important for us, not just in the farming areas. So I know it is an issue at times.
All right, we appreciate your time and the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Did we receive anything?
No public comment at this time.
No public comment, okay, and our audience is just staff members. Okay, we'll move on to council announcements and reports. Pete, do you have anything?
No, not at this
I
time.
think not. Susan?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Chad?
Big topic right now would be water. And I know we've had conversations in regards to water, but just for our knowledge, the state has decided to make some modifications on how they're going to more or less divvy up the water without any, I guess, without any, trying to be politically correct here, without any formality, without any background, without any knowledge, it feels like. So the water thing, I think, is going to become bigger than what even I thought it would be. I know we've done a lot of work with Sigma and moving through that world, and it felt like we were making some progress and going in the right direction. And then the state decided to, change the game. Let's not play soccer. Let's play tennis. And that's what it's feeling like right now. So we've had a few meetings about water. There's more to come, and I know these guys have some information that they're going to share as well. But if you don't know enough about water, if you don't know anything about water, start learning it now, because there's way too much going on, and just too many things are changing.
Gilbert?
No, I don't have anything to share.
Very good, thank you. Okay, I might say that we had a public workshop with our EJ element for the general plan, which is Environmental Justice Group. And we've also had some comments submitted after lots of questions, but then lots of comments. So we'll hear more about that too. Then that was on the 17th. And on the 18th, I did attend COG meeting. And one of the items on there was a cargo study. And as you know, the cargo study relates to goods movement, especially with the transportation of trucks and through Bakersfield and Shafter and other county areas. And that's part of coming into the good time, maybe because it's also going to be part of the AB 617 because of their concerns that they have with clean air for the area and with trucks involved. Also, on the 18th, I did go in and I was recorded for Read Across America. I'm not sure how all that's going to work in our school system, but it may be fun because they will have it available now. Students can choose to listen to a book or to the reader more than one time, and the families can do it all together. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that all comes together. And then we have, last week I met with staff and we worked on the recording and a video for the State of the City. It should be ready to be released after another week. It should be very nice, reflects a very positive state of the city, and it'll have pictures with it. And so I think people will enjoy seeing that, and it'll be on social media and also in print. So opportunities are there for others to view it more than one time. That's all I have. Nobody else? We'll move on. Consent calendar. We have items on the consent calendar I'd like to highlight and briefly here. First item is on checks, and then we have payroll, and we have treasurer's report, and we have minutes for February 16th. Then the next item, number 5, is to release for bid purposes our estimate for construction on 2021 for the 2021 Express and West Beltway construction project. We've talked about this in the past, and it's really coming forward now with increasing lanes and getting more traffic control out there. Number 6 has to do with release for bid purposes for a traffic signal. And that's also in conjunction with the West Beltway. Number 7 is to accept the sewer force main improvements that are installed along 7th Standard. You can see all the growth that's coming out there. And it authorizes the city engineer to file notice of completion. Number 8 is to adopt resolution number 2783, which would be for federal aid project for the future widening. As you can see, once again, as I've told some of these people on EJ, road and construction doesn't just happen tomorrow. It takes quite a process, and that's what we need to keep informing people, that it takes time. Cargo study takes time. Building of roads take time, as well as transportation in general. And then, of course, number 9 is an order for change order for City Gate Associates. And I think we're going to have a report on that even later, which has to do with the contract fire services with Kern County. Any questions before we adopt?
So in regards to consent number 9, are you going to have a report out on that? Have we received a firm report on that yet?
Representative Givens, Mayor and Council. With regards to a final report from Citygate, if that's the question, we are expecting the final report from the consultant this month, in the next week or two. The city managers group has received a verbal update on the draft report in terms of the content, and they're finalizing the report and will distribute to the participating cities. So once we have that, that will be shared with council as part of future discussion item related to contract negotiations with Kern County Fire.
Thank you. Thank you. I have no further questions, and I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar as read.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Givens and seconded by Councilmember Lopez to approve consent calendar.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Given,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Proud.
Yes. Okay, the next item is the public hearing, and our first item on public hearing has to do with the approval of annexation number 5, which is a landscape and lighting assessment district connected out in Customer Grove.
Okay.
Honorable Mayor, members of the Shafter City Council, as Gossamer Grove continues to grow, we need to make sure that the Special Assessment District that funds public landscape and lighting maintenance continues to grow as well. So the residents there can be paying their fair share for the operation and maintenance of those improvements. The Lennar is looking to record and develop track 7346 phases 1 through 3, which would add approximately 300 new lots to the community. And it's going to continue to grow to the north, I believe. The council previously adopted an engineer's report that recommends assessments for these new lots, as well as authorized a public hearing for tonight's meeting. We need to conduct a public hearing before we can proceed with this expansion of the district, which is annexation number 5. So just to give you a little background on the annexation, the assessments, the recommended assessments will come in at just at under $540 per benefiting lot. And those assessments can take place as early as next year, which just depends on the rate of development and the growth of this particular tract. So if approved, it's important also to point out that this particular annexation starts to address funding of a new park. It's referred to as community park, and it's going to have more of a recreational emphasis. I understand there's going to be some rec fields that are going to be involved with this particular park. So this annexation starts to address that as far as funding. So, again, with the hearing that's required tonight, we request that you conduct it right now, and then at the close of the hearing, we ask that you consider adoption of resolution 2782, which if adopted would formally approve and order the annexation of these new lots. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Okay, there are no questions, then we can entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I'm
I'll
sorry,
second.
Mayor, we need to open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I moved too fast, didn't I? I know, I don't have a gavel.
I did.
Okay, at this time, we'll open a public hearing and ask for any input. And if you have anything for or against, me come forward at this time, or did anyone send anything in? No. Did you get anything either, Steph?
I did not receive any public comment, but I've neglected to inform you that Lennar, as the owner of this tract, all of the lots that are included in this annexation, they're entitled to a 45-day notice of this public hearing. And we haven't reached that 45-day waiting period, but because they want to expedite the recordation and the development of this tract, they have furnished a waiver of that 45-day waiting period or formal notice of this hearing. And they've also furnished a ballot approving the future assessments on these lots.
Okay, so we have no public hearing. No one has anything to say. I'll close the public hearing at this time. Now I'll ask for the motion.
Make that motion once again to approve as read.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Givens, seconded by Councilmember Espinoza.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Pro.
Yes. The next item is the unmet transit needs for fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's unmet transit needs public hearing is an annual process that happens each year. This is a requirement of the Transit Development Act. This is a funding source that comes for both transit services as well as street maintenance through the Kern Council of Governments. This requirement for each eligible claimant wishing to receive TDA funding has to actually have one of these public hearings to receive comments from the public about any unmet transit needs that they may have. At this point, staff has not received any comments as the writing of the staff report or any public comments. But the purpose of the public hearing is to give an opportunity for those comments to be heard. Included in the staff report is a resolution for council to adopt that says there are no unmet transit needs being reported. However, any public comments are received as part of the public hearing. We ask that the amendment be adopted with, the resolution be adopted with amendments to include any comments that you may receive. So at this point, we're recommending council conduct the public hearing and adopt resolution number 2784 with any amendments that council may deem desirable. With that, that completes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for the staff?
I do. As far as concerns, I don't know if that has to do with this right here, but are we doing any kind of pickup as far as our picking up anybody from the Hispanic colony out there?
At this point, so when COVID-19 took effect, the transit service shut down. When it came back up, it was internal city boundaries only. We did receive a request late last week from Kern County to see if we can extend that pickup back out to the areas. We will probably be doing that. We need to basically work on public communication out that at certain times, basically 4 p.m., the dial-a-ride service stops, and to make sure that the residents that are, or the residents of the colonies that are using the dial-a-ride service get their transportation back before the service shuts down and they're stuck inside the city limits.
Yeah, because I got a concerned resident out there that's she's disabled, and she's been told that they won't pick her up. That's just what I've been told. I don't know if there's anything, if you have any complaints to that source, but she is disabled and she is in need of a ride into Shafter and then back. I don't know if they reached out to you guys yet or not, but
I think she may have, Councilmember Lopez, she may have reached out to the Kern County, which may be triggering that request. They had to
Okay.
add that service to expansion. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll be looking at that. And just again, the key thing is for us and working through our transit drivers to make sure to advise those residents or those users of the service to make sure they schedule the pickup return trip before 4 p.m.
Okay.
We'll be expanding that probably starting next week.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So you will expand it by phone calls, the people will call in and, okay,
Correct, Mayor.
okay. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing for anyone who cares to address the council or anything for or against unmet transit needs for coming year. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any other questions? Okay, now we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve as read.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Givens and seconded by Councilmember Lopez to adopt resolution number 2784.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Proud.
Yes. Okay, moving on to management reports. The first item is the professional services agreement for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan update.
Honorable Mayor, members of the Chapter City Council, urban water providers that service 3,000 or more service connections, which includes the city of Shafter, are required to prepare, adopt, and submit an urban water management plan every 5 years. The next plan update covering water use in the city through 2020 is due to the state this July. The plan is intended to be a planning tool, not necessarily a binding document that covers topics such as water sources, conservation, and contingency planning. As I stated, the next update is due this July. The previous two versions, the 2015 and the 2010 plans, were prepared in-house. But given the limited staff time that we have this particular year and the impact or the integration of sustainable groundwater management into this particular update, we really think we need some outside help from a consultant to make sure we submit this plan on time. One consultant, West and Associates, which I understand is based in the Orange County area, submitted a proposal in the amount of $26,750 to provide the support and resources we need to complete this year's plan update. We haven't worked with this firm in the past, but reference checks by our staff suggest that this firm has proven experience in this particular topic. So most importantly, they're willing and able to start right away. In fact, we have their work approved tonight. We're scheduled to commence work as early as this Thursday. So the services will be paid for with the existing water enterprise funds, which don't require budget action on your part tonight. And so we're requesting authorization to approve their proposal and award a professional services contract to this firm. And it's important to point out that we'll be bring the plan before you for formal adoption, and we'll walk you through the plan at that time. And we anticipate that's going to be in June.
Okay, staff still up here. Any questions?
Need a motion? Good.
Ready?
Make a motion to approve as read.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Givens, seconded by Councilmember Lopez to approve this professional services agreement with West and Associates.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Prout.
Yes. Next item is a submittal of a comment letter by the city of Shafter to Kern County Public Works Department regarding the countywide proposed fee increase for illegal dumping.
Certainly, Mayor and Council, I'm not going to repeat the presentation as you just heard from Kern County Public Works, but a draft letter was attached to the agenda packet that basically identifies 3 points to provide comment on. The first is that the fee increase timing is less than ideal given the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to our residents. 2, the plan lacks a feasibility study of whether a fee allocation can fully fund what a city such as Shafter needs to fund an illegal dumping program within its jurisdiction. And finally, the land use increase does not address more pressing obligations, most notably compliance with looming waste diversion requirements, most notably the organics diversion program required by SB 1383. I would also, with council's consideration, that adding a 4th comment related to the cost allocation as it relates to the number of homes versus the maintained miles based on the conversation we had, that they do take that into consideration and find some method to increase that 114th in the future as more homes come online. Meanwhile, our maintained miles could remain the same and we won't realize that additional revenue. So that would be the 4th point to make to the letter. Staff is recommending that we at least go on record and submit this letter to the county, and that way the Board of Supervisors has this for them to consider. Ultimately, the Board of Supervisors may still decide to proceed with the Prop 218 protest hearing in the future, but as it pertains to our position and comments, we'll at least go on record.
So is it fully understood that we will be required to be part of this, even though
Yes.
we choose not to as our voting party?
Correct. Under the Prop 218 process going countywide, as you know, as you're familiar with the Prop 218, it's basically a protest hearing that 51% of the property owners have to vote no for it. But candidly, we all know that 51% of property owners aren't going to respond to this and protest and say, no, we don't want that. So most likely, if the county is to do the Prop 218, it will include Shafter. And even if Shafter residents, or excuse me, property owners voted, the majority voted no for it, but countywide, there was less than 51% protest, it would still be implemented.
Might be interesting if it happened.
Right. It's kind of like a regional county sales tax or a revenue measure that even though a particular city's voters may vote it down, if countywide the numbers is 51%, the tax still takes place. Same principle here.
The unfortunate from what I heard in the presentation, because I did hear you ask the question about what happens if we don't participate. And I think they were clear without being clear and saying, we really don't care if you do or don't. The Board of Supervisors will make the final determination regardless of what you have to say right
But
now.
the Board of Supervisors needs to listen to the cities too. So.
I agree, but based on what they're saying, I think, Pete, you asked the questions, about educating the people, and I agree to that. I think if they're going to put the money in something, it shouldn't be putting the money in this. It should be putting the money in either some type of penalty or assessment system to where, yeah, if you do call the sheriff's department, they have something to actually work with. And that was a question I know Chief's on the line, and if I'm out of turn for asking this question, but do we have anything internally for the city of Shafter that we could educate and say, listen, you dumped on property, it's in the city of Shafter. We can go after them for that instead of trying to do what you're talking about and going back behind them and picking it up.
Mike,
Well,
do
we
we
don't
have
do the
anything?
county.
It'd be a code enforcement issue in terms of the enforcement, but let me see, Mike knows.
Yeah, I know.
Public Works doesn't really have the best perspective when it comes to private property, enforcement of these types of policies. But I do know, I think I have reached out to the police department in the past, and it is a really tough battle to track, not to track it and follow up on it and prove that ultimately the source of that illegally dumped waste came from that particular person. And you'll probably spend more money and resources trying to track down something and where it's more cost effective, unfortunately, just to pick it up with the crews that you have. And I think it's important to point out, if we do want to invest in public outreaches, people just don't understand that if they take a mattress to the landfill, they shouldn't be charged. The land use fees pay for that material to be diverted at the landfill at no cost. That's my understanding. Now we get into construction debris. It's a different story. It's a totally different, I might be wrong, but I think there's just a misconception about what the cost would be or what compliance would end up consisting of. I think people are not getting the message, and I think the county could probably be a little more proactive on getting the message out as far as what policies and fees they should be expected when people pull into the landfill with certain types of materials.
Well, I mean, all they're theoretically doing is telling somebody in the county, well, I'll take Smith's Corner. You take somebody in Smith's Corner in the county section, oh, I can't dump here, or whatever the case may be, and they can clean it up, or I can just move it over to the city limits, and now it's all on us. And the county just simply said, we're not going to cross the road to help you. That's the way I heard it. And that's where the frustration comes in is, can that money actually be used? I'm going to say this correctly. Is there enough money in there to actually have to combat this if that situation starts occurring, which it sounds like that situation is already occurring.
Correct. And 114,000 would help, but it's not going to be sufficient. I mean, already our public works staff struggles with that. But I think the other issue to be cautious about is behavior. That once the residents know that we're going to go around picking up illegal debris, people are just going to do more of it. And it's going to be kind of a cycle in which we're just forever going to be doing that. And it's going to be people's way of, instead of going to the landfill, oh, I'll just go to someone's alley and dump it there and I don't worry about it because, hey, the city's picking it up and they
That's
have
right,
money
we already
for it.
do.
And we already do that now.
I have a question, Mike, for you and maybe for the chief as well. I've seen people dump stuff on Tulare, West Tulare. And is it worth me stopping and taking a picture of the person, or just keep on going, just not even worth the paperwork or the time?
I think it's worth the effort. If we could make an example of one person, I mean, it's worth pursuing, and you'll have our support to follow up on it. Okay. But I think it's important to point out, regardless of what direction the county goes in, I mean, we're going to do our part with drop-off events, free drop-off events. I think we're even efforting to have one within the next month. And one thing we could consider when we're tackling the SB 1383 and considering Blue Card or other types of innovative programs, something with an example of what the city of Bakersfield does. They give residents 2 bulky items to drop off every couple of months, I think, free of charge. And they schedule that ahead of time. So if maybe residents know they have that option to not even leave their house, to not even load it in the back of their pickup truck to find a place to dump it illegally. That's probably something we could consider. And if ultimately we're stuck with this 114,000 to use, we might consider using a private hauler or another resource to tackle a program like that.
I would like somehow to go back, and I think you said it correctly. I do want somehow to go back and look at the difference from the mileage versus the housing, because I agree. How many of the homes are used Gossamer? How many of the homes in Gossamer are going to be built on roads that are already built? And so if those roads are already in the system, then they're accounting for those roads, but they're not accounting for the homes that are going to be on those roads. And that goes along anywhere that you see right now. So I would like to make sure that if this is what's going to be the forced option from them, then we do it right to where we can allocate that money to help the city. If I'm going to have to pay for something as a city resident, I want that money to be allocated to something that's going to be useful and not just back to the county to throw away.
We have Chief Zimmerman on the call to answer the question as to he would know better in terms of the use of police officers to try to go after illegal dumping. Chief.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, I can tell you that illegal dumping is very much like our scavenging ordinance in that you need to witness the activity with your own eyes. So back to what Councilmember Alvarado was talking about, if we have a witness, that is a kind of a horse of a different color. We can write a police report, submit that to the DA because we didn't physically witness it, and then we could ask the DA to file those charges. But other than that, it's very difficult because we have to actually witness them do it at that time. And if they see a police officer, they're less likely to dump it. So it is a real challenge, but we've tackled scavenging just by being out and about. So if we're having a problem like on West Tulare, then what we'll do is we'll just increase our activity on West Tulare and hope that our presence is going to affect some measure of change.
Okay.
Mike, I like what you said about, the picking stuff up. I think another avenue to do would be to allow it to have a spot to have it dropped off. Because if we did that periodically, then people would say maybe, I think this is a generational thing. And the people that are doing it right now are really probably not going to stop. But the younger people that grasp the idea of, hey, there's a place and a time when you can take it and they will do it, I think it would be better to try to get ahead of the curve that way and try to take this on. Because like I said, this is a daily challenge for me. I mean, every morning I get up and I drive around the ranch, and then I got to instruct guys to go to over here, pick up a mattress. Over here is a washer. Over there is a freezer, stuff like that. Over here is construction waste, stuff like that. But I think the biggest part of it is just educating the people, to letting them know, first of all, that it's not right and it's not the thing to be doing. And then second of all, that we will help them get rid of that stuff instead of them going out and dumping it.
Yeah, I agree that the key is to education, and also to take away excuses for them to make that convenient for them. I mean, I think it probably is going to be more convenient to have a service provided directly in front of their house, and we need to explore that. And we could possibly use the revenue generated from this fee increase, if it's ultimately approved, towards the program.
Yeah, and then just to follow up, we wouldn't wait for a county vehicle or a city vehicle to come out there and pick it up, because it's an eyesore. Trash attracts trash. So if people see trash, then all of a sudden here they come. And just to give you an idea of what it cost us $900 to have a roll-off dropped off out there, and then we have to supply the manpower to load everything up and then have it hauled off.
Correct.
Won't that be a little challenge to have people have a certain day and take their stuff out to the front? Because then people do it the day before, and just imagine having people putting refrigerators in front of the yards and sofas and stuff. It's like,
well, I mean, we could the Bakersfield Solid Waste Division is a pretty innovative, forward-thinking kind of division. I would be happy to kind of reach out to my counterparts over there and see what experiences they have. The thinking is that if they have the manpower and the muscle to load it in their truck, I mean, certainly putting it in front of their driveway won't be a challenge. And if you schedule it on a certain day and time, it won't be sitting out there for too long in theory. But it's probably, nonetheless, we probably need to learn from Bakersfield's experiences before we, seriously consider something like that.
almost like the challenges that we have with the limbs today, so.
Correct.
Well, and I think the city of Shafter has already worked on controlling the drop waste that we have. And we do it with the leaves, we do it with trees, certain times of the year. And the county needs to look at ways that they can deal with the county. And if we're talking about this going into effect and the county's going to be dumping onto us, well, then we'll have funding that we'll have to deal with it. But I don't want to see us putting stuff out in front of the house. I agree with you, because they won't keep track of the days. And it isn't a pleasure now when you have leaves piled out there for 2 weeks. And I have people say that.
Well, something I'd like to share, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it firsthand, is county residents know that there's a brush program, and they know that the city's a lot more proactive within city limits. So they'll literally, for example, they'll literally go from the south side to the north side of Elizabeth Avenue at Shafter Avenue and place their materials because they know Shafter is proactive in that regard.
Yes.
And I'm a little concerned that, it's going to get worse if they know that the county's not going to follow through potentially on the unincorporated areas that surround us.
That's right. I mean, we're going to open up a really can of worms. And maybe we should pass some of these suggestions on to Lynn. I mean, she asked for what we might suggest. And, I feel good when I see the staff, our workers come by, go down the alley, because I do have an alley. And I like to see that. But we've created a bigger problem, because then people more so dump in the alley because they know someone else is going to come and get it. So we can educate all we want, but it's still going to happen. I mean, they're smart in other ways. So we have any other comments?
Governor, so the recommendation is for us to go ahead and submit. My understanding is to go ahead and add about the changing the methodology for the appropriation of the funds. And then if council would like, we can also add something about enforcement. I think there was a common theme about what maybe the county do more about enforcement for illegal dumping.
Well, at least we'd have it in the letter. There's nothing wrong with that. Does anyone have any problem with that? No, just add it to the letter.
That's including education too. That's
Yeah, education, enforcement, the 2 E's.
okay. Because I think the people that are doing it right now, it's going to be hard to stop them from doing it unless they find it in their heart. But we got to start with a group ahead of them and just get it in their mind that it's not the right thing to do.
Okay, need a motion? Make the motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Espinoza, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Givens.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Prout.
Yes. Next item is the mid fiscal year 2020-21 budget update.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you mentioned, Mayor, the report is on the mid-year update for fiscal year 2021. In your packets are the detailed report. Tonight's presentation will feature the highlights from that report. Just 1 second as we pull the PowerPoint. Perfect. So if you go to the next slide, the presentation tonight is going to feature the following matters. Revenues and expenditures. We'll discuss those in brief. We'll have a brief update on the capital improvement plan. We'll discuss the rail and telecommunications enterprise funds. And then we'll follow up with some budget amendments and more specifically one regarding the building department. Next slide. So to give a little bit of background, the fiscal year 21 adopted budget was created based on 3 budget pillars. Maintaining fiscal financial sustainability, which the budget identified as preserving the general fund, prudent use of reserves, funding 100% of the CalPERS contributions, and capitalizing on economic development. Public safety was the second one, with a focus on police and public works resources to maintain a safe and vibrant community. And then employee wellness, adequate personnel, protective equipment, and complying with the Center for Disease Control and county health safety measures. In that budget projected as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, a $4 million reduction in revenues. And so the budget was adjusted to accommodate that. The next slide. This is a look at the general fund revenues as of the mid-year, with sales tax being accounted for in the most recent update up to the December collection. As of the mid-year, including sales tax that were collected in December, we have received 52.5% of our revenues for the fiscal year. Sales tax, the other amount that's circled in red on the slide, has come at 71.6% of the budget amount. This will be discussed a little bit further on our next slide. You will notice that right above that, property tax is lagging collection. As the mid-year, only received 13% of the revenue. Historically, these funds usually come in largely in the second half of the fiscal year. And you can see that also with motor vehicle license fees, which we have not received anything yet at this point in time. That again also comes in usually in the second half of the fiscal year. We do know that more payments have been recorded as part of the third quarter for the year so far, so you will receive that amount in the next update. The next slide, please. When we talk about sales tax overall for the calendar year 2020, despite a few months of revenue reduction, namely April being the largest, calendar year 2020 has seen an increase of 9% in sales tax revenues for the city. For the fourth quarter, as stated in the report, sales tax is about 16% higher, or roughly $800,000 more than the prior year. We are waiting for the detailed information by sector and the large revenue generators regarding the fourth quarter to have an analysis of where that large increase came from. And then we'll share that with council once we obtain that information and conduct that analysis. We'll go over to the general fund expenditures. On the screen is general fund expenditures. Overall at the bottom, the general fund has expended just under 50% of its planned expenditures as of the mid-year. Some departments are a little over and some are a little under. The circled percentage in the middle is the Administrative Services Department, 72.8%. It's the highest one. This is the result of the annual subscription and continued deployment costs for the Munis implementation software. As part of the budget, there wasn't a carry forward of the remaining balance of that project being rolled forward. So there is a requested budget amendment that we'll discuss later on to move those funds from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. There's also a proposed budget amendment coming up for non-departmental, that's the top row, to address the CARES Act funding and purchases resulting from the ransomware incident costs. Non-departmental or those costs are not tied to a specific department, with the vast majority of the budget being the sales tax sharing agreements, revenue sharing agreements, I should say. And then a third amendment will be presented later as well for the police department to use last year's money approved for the purchase of 4 police vehicles. Those costs were incurred and delivered this fiscal year. Moving on to the non-general fund revenues. So these slides constitute all the other funds of the city at the fund level. Most of the revenue are only gathered through a few sources as opposed to the range found in the general fund. This slide shows approximately half of the non-general funds in the city. We're going to address a few of them. Transit Development Act, for example, streets revenue was received this year for the prior fiscal year. And so the claims for TDA funding were made in the second half of this fiscal year. TDA is also a large funding source for transit, which on the next slide we'll see also receives this amount in the second half of the fiscal year. You also notice connection and mitigation funds in the middle of that table. Those are driven by projects and their impacts. Wastewater and traffic have seen large contributions, but water connection fees have not seen a lot of revenue as of the mid-year. The landscaping, lighting, maintenance districts on the bottom third of this table are driven by property tax assessments. And so like property tax are largely collected in the second half of the fiscal year. Next slide. You're already on it, sorry. On this screen, this is the second half. And again, the top third are more of the landscaping and lighting districts. The utilities are performing within 5% of their budget target for mid-year, even with the higher than normal account delinquency experienced by the pandemic and the moratoria that we have on utility shutoffs. Here we also see that the transit revenue is down, as mentioned previously. Telecommunications is coming in lower to date due to tower lease revenues. Payments were received after the mid-year though, and that will report in the next update. And then wrapping up, MCCF's annual budget was only including the first 6 months of the year. As the facility closed at the end of October, only 60% of budget operations were conducted. The final amounts will be determined as part of the closing audit with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And then finally, rail operations has only received 7% of the budget amounts. This is from rail car storage fees. These were last earned in October. Lease for the container yard, which was $3,000 per month, ended in January. The internal service funds are internally managed revenues and are allocated based on the budget amount spread evenly throughout the year. And then they are reconciled at the end of the year based on actual expenditures. And then finally, wrapping up the chart, the North Park, North Shafter Assessment District, again, is one of those property tax-driven assessments. And so falls into the same thing as property tax with coming in the second half of the year. All right, moving on to the expenditure side of the non-general fund revenues. Next two slides, again, split those across the two slides. Which identify a couple of them. Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Account Fund, which is the first one highlighted on the chart, is overdue to a portion of the cost for the 2020 Zerka Road Improvement Project. Some of the invoices were hit in this fiscal year. So a budget amendment to utilize the savings from the prior fiscal year is being proposed for council to consider later tonight for this fund. Similarly, wastewater connection, and it had a similar situation that the last fiscal year's Southeast Sewer Expansion Project had some project costs hit the current fiscal year as well. And so there's again, a similar budget amendment for that one. And then we have some amendments for the landscaping lighting districts. For example, district, it's at the second one from the bottom, 004-2005, did not have any funds budgeted this year for expenditures. And so we're to have some budget amendments to clean up those funds, to identify those expenditures that are likely to occur this fiscal year. On the second page, again, the top part, we have more of the landscaping lighting districts that are identified with a similar situation. And at the bottom, you notice North Park and North Shafter has expended all of its budget on fees. There's a budget amendment also being proposed for debt service payments to a USDA rural development loan. Again, we'll discuss those budget amendments later on. If you go to the next slide, talk about the budget overall. So the overall picture for the general fund, revenues at 52.5%, expenditures at 49.8%. Non-general funds as an aggregate are seeing similar revenues, are seeing smaller revenues, than budgeted, but also smaller expenditures as well. However, this is an aggregate and individual funds are treated separately. One change that staff is going to be making is to increase the frequency in which council receives budget updates. Instead of mid-year, we'll be expanding this to quarterly reporting to council. So the next report will be the third quarter report, which will cover the period from July through March. So before moving on to the next section, I want to check and see if there are any questions or if you council would like me to continue.
Quick couple, if you don't mind. The transit revenues are down.
Correct. And so the most of the large part of the funding, since transit is subsidized, it usually comes from TA.
Will that hurt our federal grant if we're down? I think we're supposed to be in some threshold area with what funds come in and what expenditures go out, correct?
Typically, yes. So there's a TDA claim that checks expenditures going out, revenues coming in, and adjusts it based on our total claim and what's been allocated for us. We did get extra funding through the CARES Act. So there's 2 additional fundings that require no match at all from the city that we can use to augment and make that up. So
it doesn't hurt our federal grant. We're okay on that. We can still maintain and kind of keep the cost low for dial-a-ride and what have you.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. That's it.
Move on to the next section then, unless there's any other questions. So the next slide is the capital improvement plan. And so in the pack is an attachment that has a table that talks about each specific project. But I want to kind of go over some generalities and high overview of the capital improvement plan. So generally speaking, there's what I call low utilization at this point. So what that means is the 9.7 million was a total CIP appropriations that was budgeted by council. So far, 1.9 million of actual expenditures haven't occurred as of the mid-year. It's about 20%. Again, that's not atypical. A lot of the projects are determined by project phasing, implementation, design, et cetera. So I want to talk about 2 of those items. So streets projects comprise about 51% of the total CIP adopted. So 4.9 million of that 9.7 million. So far, 22% has been used. It's about 1.1 million of that 4.9 million for streets. But again, we expect to see increases as the spring, early summer comes up and the projects start going towards implementation again. The second one is water projects. They comprise about 44% of the total adopted CIP by amount, which amount total is 4.3 million. As of the mid-year, 446,000 was spent. It's about 10%. We know that our water tank project expenditures are expected in the last half of the fiscal year, as well as a meter retrofit project. We'll now have most of the expenditures in the next phase as well as the next fiscal year. So overall, those 2 streets and water projects make up 95% of the budgeted capital improvement plan. Next slide, please. I want to talk to council about the telecommunications fund or the fiber optic network. So as discussed in the adopted budget, staff is reviewing the telecommunications and the rail enterprise funds to try to develop a plan to address the amounts owed to the general fund. And we're presenting tonight a review of what has been found regarding the history and the base of the funds, and then discussing our next step. So we're starting with telecommunications. As we researched the beginning of the fund, we found no detailed level business or financial plan. And we did discover that a master plan was put together by a firm called 180 Connect, but the plan was largely conceptual, lacking specificity regarding financial forecasting or business practices to manage the enterprise. Without those revenue and expenditure projections, nothing really was present to compare against or to gauge deviation from the plan, and the cumulative fund balances owed to the general fund were increasing. We do know from reviewing the master plan that the largest drivers for the telecommunications fund involved economic development, city facilities, data and communications improvements. Again, same services provided for the school districts, residential high-speed internet and communications, and then the last tenet was that it pays for itself. The plan was to deploy residential with new housing. Of course, this plan was developed right before the 2008-2009 residential housing recession, which significantly altered and deferred implementation. We do know that for commercial enterprises that high-speed data access is one of the top demands, particularly for distribution centers. Research into the customers currently on the city's fiber network revealed that we have 21 residential customers at this time and 12 commercial enterprises, a couple of those with 2 accounts. Of special note, at the wonderful industrial park, we have Amazon, Ross, and Walmart that are on the city's network. So on the screen is a graph showing the history of the amount of the telecommunications fund owes the general fund through the 2019 CAFR. In the budget document, the amount owed to the general fund was listed as $688,000, but the budget assigned the amount of $995,000 of the general fund balance for the telecommunications fund in order to cover any overages. The projection of the current status of the fund places it at around $750,000. However, this amount will likely change during the second half of the fiscal year. So going forward, staff is developing options to bring back to council. Some of the options we're looking at right now are contracting out, whether it be through franchising or leasing, and also potentially consultant business and financial plan to develop that detailed plan if we want to keep it in-house. We're anticipating presentation of options at either the third quarter update or as part of the fiscal year 22 budget development. Moving on to the rail fund, again, there's staff in their review did not find any detailed business or financial plan. In fiscal year 2006, the project started with a $5 million state grant funded construction project. In 2009, that component was completed and the enterprise fund started. Revenues came from track use and rail car storage fees, as well as later on lease revenues from the container yard facility. For the first 7 years, the rail enterprise fund was performing well. Revenues outpaced expenditures, leading to larger fund balances. However, in fiscal year 2017, a combination of 2 factors flipped the balance of the enterprise. The capital improvement project was initiated and an advance from the general fund was taken to help pay for the project. However, in that same year, revenues dried up to only $30,000 in the fiscal year, causing the large drop and leaving the rail enterprise unable to contribute back to the general fund for the advance. The next 2 years saw expenditures outpace revenues by approximately $55,000 a year on average. Revenues at the mid-year are about $10,000. Rail car storage and movement fees ended in October, and the lease continued through the mid-year, but ended after January 2021. So again, like the telecommunications enterprise, staff is developing options again to bring back to council as part of a third quarter update or the next budget development to bring those options to council for consideration. So the next section, we'll be talking about amendments that are being proposed. This first set are what I call the existing approvals. So what we found in the adopted city charter is that a budget amendment must be adopted by council by resolution. In the past, it's been taken as a notation in the recommendations and approved by minute order. So these amendments on the screen here are amendments that council already approved in previous action. We're asking to formalize them as part of the resolution being requested to actually adopt them by resolution so we meet that ministerial requirement. At this point, it's the CDBG CD CARES Act, title reports for the 7th Standard Widening Project, general fund contribution towards the CDBG Aquatic Center, subsidized COBRA health benefits, Mantle Park Fitness Court Project, which is grant funded, and hiring of a planning director, including recruitment costs. Please stop me if you have any questions as we go through these. The next amendments are what we call the carry forwards. These are the amendments for projects that hadn't been completed at the end of the fiscal year, where, as we kind of mentioned, some of the projects we had costs hit in this current fiscal year 21. So going over those, we have $67,000 that were approved in fiscal year 20 for aquatic center improvements to supplement the CDBG funding. We're asking council to carry that forward into the new fiscal year. We have the 4 police vehicles that we discussed a little bit ago. That amendment is $216,000. We have an electric vehicle charging station that was approved by council in fiscal year 20 for the new corporation yard. That's $50,000. Municipal implementation costs, an annual subscription of $298,000. With the Zerker Road pavement expenditures for $431,600, and a portion of last fiscal year's appropriations for Southeast Shafter Sewer Extension for $140,000. The next 2 slides are the new requests. Again, we discussed a little bit about some of these, but the first one is for the CARES Act expenditures. So these are, we received, council approved the agreement with the county, and we also received funding from the state for CARES Act for COVID-19 response. What did not happen was an amendment to the expenditures to account for that increase.
Can we have a list of those items that were purchased under the CARES Act? Thank you.
We just got to pull the trial balance. We coded that to a separate account dedicated to CARES, so we can send it to you as a separate report.
The second item is $134,895 for the ransomware response. Partial offset still to be determined. We know that $50,000 is the minimum deductible that the city will have. But we are asking for the $134,000, which is the cost of the invoices that we've received. And we are including in those, in that proof of loss claim, the personnel costs that we incurred as well. The second item is addition to professional services for additional inspection services due to the higher building inspection activity, $125,000. Dennis Fiddler, our building official, will be presenting to council some information shortly after these next 2 slides on that, on the nature of that amendment. We're asking for $20,000 for the Learning Center for the GAF reimbursement. These expenses will be reimbursed by GF, but we still need to recognize the authorization to spend in the budget. The last one is the first of landscaping districts, $15,100 for landscaping services. The next slides are the individual landscaping districts as well, maintenance, water, and power for a few of our districts, 804, 806, and 810. And so those amounts range anywhere from $175 up to $37,800. And then finally, North Park, North Shafter assessment at the bottom, $8,410, which covers the interest and principal for USDA Rural Development Loan Debt Service. So the next slide, we're going to talk about the amendments relating to the building inspector 2 position request. We do have building activity increasing. Request is being presented to council to 1, increase professional services budget and building department by $125,000 to address the increased use of consultants, and 2, convert the finance analyst position to a building inspector 2 with no increased cost to the city. At this time, I would like to turn over the presentation to Dennis Fiddler, our building official, to complete this part of the presentation.
Thank you, Bryce. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, before you tonight is the hiring of the building inspector 2 position, amendment to the position control list, request to amend the building department budget in the amount of $125,000 for the additional professional services, and approval to transfer the budget funds from the finance analyst position to the building inspector 2 position. A brief background on the proposal: the city building department's activity has been continuous, especially unfortunately through COVID, to have seen and maintained a significant amount of growth over the past decade with a recent influx of construction activity. The amount of activity has shown steady signs to increase over the past several years, and the growth is projected to hold steady in the coming years. While residential growth in the city has had a major uptick and a major important part of this growth, the large part of the development that we're seeing right now is commercial based. Based on the interest from developers, project development is expected to follow current building trends for, at minimum, the next few years. As I mentioned, when projected development comes to fruition, current building department staff will not be able to provide service levels that were previously upheld. So the summary that's in front of you right now on the chart, the summary of revenues and expenses chart highlights the revenue collected over the past decade, and more so over the past several years. The blue line represents the building department revenue in comparison with the orange line and gray shapes, or orange and gray shapes that represent the expenditures. As you can see, the revenue is almost off the chart, and there's a good chance by the end of this fiscal year it will be off the chart. Next slide, please. The proposed net income table highlights that as for the revenue side, the original revenue was projected at $825,000. Our current revenue that we've collected to date is above 1.1 million. The conservative view of what our budget will be, our revenue budget will be 1.6 and probably likely more. As for the expense side, the original budget was 870,000. The revised budget with the proposed 125,000 for the additional professional services will put us just under $1 million at 995,000. This would give the city a net income of over $600,000 on a conservative view. It's likely that that number will be more. So the premise behind the building permit is that these fees collected are for providing services rendered. Currently, the building department's professional services budget is $130,000 for contractual services and is completely encumbered due to the increase in permit activity. Due to the number and size of proposed projects, the professional services budget will require additional funds for the count for the remainder of the year for $125,000. That's what Bryce spoke about. The city collects 35% above those expenditures for the work we put into it. With the increase in this activity, the addition of the building inspector position is a necessity as well. And due to the high level demands of the work to be performed, staff is recommending that this position be filled as a building inspector 2 position. Development has shown steady signs of increase over the past several years, and this growth is projected to hold steady and probably increase in the coming years. With the high revenues, just for this year, we have earned enough money to support this position for the next 5 years. However, staff is proposing to cease recruitment and eliminate the finance analyst position and shift the budget over to the fully burden the cost of the building inspector 2 position. The inspector 2 position is slightly lower than the finance analyst position, so essentially there will be no increasing cost to the city of the building inspector 2 position. As part of this recommendation, I was asked to review the options of a limited term position as well as contracting out the services. The data truly shows that the full-time in-house inspector will best fit the needs of the community. Full-time staff has proven to be more loyal, better sense of community, and they maximize city resources by keeping skill and knowledge gained through city training in the city. So these actions will help close the gap between service demand and service levels. Although staff is recommending a full-time position, below is the data for the various options. If you can go to the next slide, please. So here's the options: the building inspector 2 position versus the building inspector limited term versus the contractual inspector. Again, we're recommending the building inspector 2 full-time in-house. But you have the other ones in front of you. The following data, so next slide, please. The following data will support the consideration of the building inspector 2 position, which will help maintain the high standard of customer service that Shafter community expects and deserves. The building department full-time employee chart is a representation of the building department employees in conjunction with the earned building department revenue over the past decade. The chart identifies the proposed revenue that is anticipated this current year and has updated the number of projected full-time employees. The chart paints a good picture of the uptick in permit activity in conjunction with staffing levels that will help understand without additional employees, the city will begin to see a significant reduction in the building department's ability to provide the level of assistance that the community members are accustomed to. The orange line represents the building permit revenue in comparison with the blue shapes, which represent the full-time employees. Please note the 5.8 number of employees is the projected employee with the new proposed building inspector 2 position. Next slide, please. The last table represents the current and future operational workload demand capacities for only residential construction with an average number of daily inspections per building inspector. This data is difficult to measure since Shafter's typical building department operation does not begin and end with only building inspections. The higher level inspections are even more difficult to measure, as Shafter has some days that building department is in the field all day due to large daily workload demands. In Shafter, all city building inspectors and even the building official wear many different hats, which begins with customer service. All building employees are trained to assist with counter code questions, answer phone calls, emails, write up building permits, complete plan reviews, conduct inspections, training, and all the administrative functions that go with the position. Given the uptick in the building permit activity, this position is highly recommended to help offset the lowering of the service levels. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. I'm going to have Bryce close out the summary of recommendations and fiscal impact for the entire mid-year budget. But if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them.
So Mayor and Council, again, just restating the recommendations, staff is recommending approval of resolution number 2785 to adopt the budget amendments proposed. And then to approve the conversion of the finance analyst position to building inspector 2 position. Next steps there will be staff will be following up with increasing financial reporting to council, quarterly budget updates, presenting options on telecommunications or rail at the 3rd quarter budget update or as part of the fiscal year 22 budget process. And then we'll also be sending back to council the CARES Act expenditures as requested. With that completes the presentation, and we're happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Anyone have any comments at this point?
So I'm having a hard time. And it's my negligence. How about that? I just feel like I have too many questions and I'm just lacking details and expenditures. Transit expenditures on this are showing higher than the revenue. So I don't know what we spent in transit expenditures if we didn't have the money coming in. 2020, we didn't do anything with transit. We spent 9 months sitting. So I'm a little lost on where some of the costs are coming from. There's costs associated with the rail operations. I don't know what we had going on with the rail operations. The water operation expenditures are low. I know you could probably address that since you're here. And I'm not complaining that they're low. It seems, when we do budgets, and I guess I'm just accustomed that if we say it's going to be $1 million, it's either going to be 999,000 or 1 million or $1 million and $1. We're typically right there. And so to see the differences in each one of these, I'm having a hard time just understanding what's going on here with the budget. I agree. I don't care for the financial analysis position, and having a building inspector is the right way to go. And I would like to see that position authorized and started being filled immediately if we can. So I'm torn because I don't really agree with where the budget's at. I guess I just have too many questions and I'd like to see some more details, just like we talked about with the CARES Act. I saw the CDBG funding for the CARES. I remember approving that. I remember having a discussion on that, but the $666,000, I don't remember, regardless of it being free money or not, I don't remember having the conversation about each of the items that were presented in that. So I just want to have more clarification on the financials before we just say, yeah, we're happy with this. And I'm only speaking for myself, so I apologize for saying we, before I can sit here and say, yeah, I'm happy with it, way to go. I have too many questions. So part of me says, yeah, I want to approve for the building inspector, drop the financial analyst, but I don't want to approve for the financials. I'm having too hard of a time seeing that right now. I'm sorry.
So the recommendation would be for us to have a workshop for this type of item. Because it gets complicated because you can spend another 3 hours here just trying to go over this budget.
Typically in budget sessions, we spend a lot of time going over it, and we have a very detailed outlook of what that looks like.
So you recommending to staff to have a workshop?
I'm not recommending to have a workshop. I'm recommending to get more information. Go back to the drawing board. At the very least, get us the information, get us some details, And you can overwhelm us with the details, and that's completely fine. And we can choose to read that or not read that. I like to read those things. When I see financials come out, I do go through there and I do see where the money's going and coming from. That's important to me, and it may not be important to everybody, and that's okay. But for me, I like to see that. And I'm not seeing that here. I'm seeing general overview. I'm seeing a lot of money in the landscape districts, and I'm not smart enough to tell you which landscape districts those are. They're LLs, 2005 and 2007, and I don't know where they're going. And that's a lot of money that we spent in that as well. So I just would like to have a little more detail on each one of these categories. So workshop, no. Come back to the next council meeting with that detail. That would be fantastic.
But if you have a workshop, you could ask all those detailed, fine-tuned questions for everybody to understand.
And that's fine if you want to do a workshop.
Yeah,
It doesn't
so
bother
a
me to do
workshop.
that either.
We won't be a bear, the big grizzlies, do it all the way, because otherwise they're gonna spend a lot of time, a lot of manpower to do this report, which is good for all of us. We all go home with it. We're still gonna be lost anyways. We're all gonna have 20,000 questions. So why not just have a workshop, kill everybody? You might have the same question I have, so that eliminates, it helps me. Just one less question for all of us.
Very well. Having a recommendation as a workshop doesn't bother me, but sitting here and approving financials tonight does, and I can't do that. But my recommendation, so if I were to make a recommendation based on what you and I are discussing, my recommendation would be to not approve financials tonight, to come back with a financial workshop with a detailed financial book, but approve the building inspector position and removing the financial analysis position tonight. That would be mine.
I have a question of the attorney then. And it's interesting because I was feeling the same thoughts, that I didn't see the listing of any of the amendments, and I looked back through here and I realized that this resolution was going to do that. And I'm going to say that I was not going to approve any of these amendments until at least I can look at the amendment list of amendments and what we have here. Even in the capital improvements, the report is so tiny that it's very difficult to read. And so when we look at capital improvement plan project update, I'd like to see it clearer and maybe discuss some, and maybe it does take a workshop. So how can we tonight go ahead and approve the hiring of the position so that we can get on the roll for that and not have to take action on the rest of it?
So what's before you tonight is a receive and file of the mid-year budget. So you don't have to do that tonight. That's where all the questions are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of that is a recommendation to approve resolution 2785, which does what you're asking for with respect to the addition of the building inspector. The only question I have is whether or not section 2 of that resolution is part of that, or do we need to delete section 2?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's fine with me to delete it.
Because if we don't need section 2, if section 2 is part of the broader budget, then we just delete section 2 and you approve the resolution as amended.
Yes, Mayor Kelsey, yeah, you could, the section 2 is the budget amendments that can be removed from the resolution, still go with the position.
And that's something that I would think we'd have to do. If we have all the questions on the receiving the mid-year budget, then you cannot adopt the amendments to the budget, which would be number 2. So 1 and 2 would be strike down, and then we would just approve. I don't mind making a motion. I know there's more questions probably to be asked, but I would theoretically want to make a motion to approve resolution 2785 with recommendation 3 only, striking 1 and 2. Okay.
Mayor and Council, the building inspector position is net zero to the budget because salary and benefits for the financial analyst position is less. So it's of no impact to the general fund budget. So if it's your intent to move in that direction and then adopt the entire resolution, that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
So long as we know that your intent is going to be to approve that amendment. I mean, all we're doing is taking the money from what would have been in finance, moving it over to building and planning, but it's zero impact to the budget because we're not increasing the appropriation for salary and benefits. We're just moving it over. So administratively, that can be done. What you're actually approving is the authorization for the second, or for that building inspector 2 position, that position. So if it's your intent to do that, and our understanding is that you're going to do that, we can still, it's going to take HR working with Dennis, a couple weeks, 3 weeks for them to get the position ready to go out and advertise it, notice it. So we can move on that, if it's your intent that you're going to approve that anyway, because the budget's already there. You're just authorizing the position.
Right, and I think that we're ready to go for building inspector too. We've already talked about it for so many times. Should have already been moving on it, and it's not gonna take 3 weeks. I mean, they gotta have it ready. We already have a position too. It's ready to go. Let's just get it out there. Let's just do it. We wasted enough time. And so let's just go ahead and do that part of it, so you can do your motion.
If there's
Anyone
any
have
other
anything
questions,
else?
yeah, I don't want to make a motion without any of the questions asked. So then let me clarify, Mayor. Are we making the resolution, removing 1 and 2, keeping number 3, but then make the amendment to move the money from the financial department over to the building department? Is that what I'm
If that's
understanding?
necessary, I don't know that.
Is that not necessary?
Yeah, that can be done administratively. What you'd be authorizing is the building inspector 2 position
Yes.
as part of the position control.
So I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2785, striking recommendation number 1, which is receiving the mid-year budget, striking recommendation number 2, which is approving the mid-year fiscal budget for 2020, 2021, approving the building inspector number 2 position in amending the position control list.
I'll second, and I'll also want to say thank you, Bryce, for all your hard work, and thank you, Dennis, for all your hard work as well.
Did you get the motion all right? Okay. Any questions on the motion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Oh, did we get? Yeah, we
roll
got the
call.
motion. Okay.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Givens,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
and Prout.
Yes. Okay. The next item is the city manager
So,
comments and reports.
Just really quick, Mayor and Council, to close the loop on the format in which you want us to bring back this additional information for you. You want that as a council study session, or you want to do it prior to a council meeting? What's the council's desire for us to bring back? Or do you want just a separate report providing that detail?
Well, let's
too?
get the report first, and then let's see what we need to do next.
I don't mind setting it. Today worked okay. I mean, I know everyone's scheduled, but today worked okay.
Oh, to do before? That's fine with me. I mean, I don't care, but I mean, let's get the report in our hand. Especially,
So provide the report ahead of time, give us a chance to look at it, and we'll do a special meeting prior to a council, just like we did today, where we can come in early, starting at 4 or however long we think it's going to take to get through it and spend the time in doing it. Typically for mid-year budget reviews in beginning budget reviews, it's not something that we run through in 5 minutes. And I understand that. So yeah, we can set it up ahead of time.
Okay, so we'll send you the information on a separate report.
do you have any additional council members or council manager comments and reports?
City manager reports, yes.
Yes, I want to call you councilman,
Yeah,
council
that-
manager. Well, that's all right, huh?
You've earned that right, thank you. But no, certainly, Mayor and Council, just a few items to share with you. Just a friendly reminder, we have the Council Strategic Visioning Workshop 1 next Friday, the 12th, from 3 to 7. That'll be in person here in our, at the Veterans Hall. With regards to the environmental justice report, last Thursday on the 25th, we received a 45-page comment letter on behalf of the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment, Shafter residents, the Committee for a Better Shafter, and the Central California Environmental Justice Network. We have at this time decided not to go forward with the March 9th workshop that was planned, the hearing that was planned. The main takeaways from the letter that we received, that 45-page letter, was one, they're asking that they're asking for translation of the environmental justice report into Spanish, and they want an additional full days to review and revise the translated document prior to any public hearing. They're also requesting that the city prepare and update the environmental impact report. The environmental impact report that we're working from is the one from the general plan adopted several years ago. I will tell you that's a very costly endeavor in the tune of several $100,000. Also too is that they're requesting removal or substantially revising all the policies that would facilitate more industrial development. And overall, we feel that the EJ's groups are taking a very hard stance to demand enforceable setbacks against 1, residential and other sensitive areas, and 2, industrial, agricultural, and oil and gas uses. So at this point, at this time, staff is going to work with the city attorney's office, review the letter, and but it looks like we're postponing any public workshop or public hearings at this time until we have an opportunity to thoroughly go over the 45-page letter. I can tell you that this appears to be very much that they could be setting us up for a future lawsuit if we don't respond appropriately and working with legal counsel. This is typically a path when you get a more or less sort of a demand letter of what the group expects. So we're going to take a very cautious approach moving forward with that. But the point being is that we're not having the workshop next week. Also, to add some more content to what Mayor Pro Tem Givens was talking, the Kern Groundwater Authority is going to be working to respond to the Department of Water Resources staff recommended changes that will have an impact to water rights, and in terms of how they're couching it for climate issues. And the comments are due March 4th. KGA's legal counsel put together a work group of attorneys representing some of the members. We do have one of our city attorneys participating in that group comprised of the attorneys. This afternoon was their first meeting that they had. Time is of the essence, and so they're working to put not just comments on behalf of Shafter, but comments for the KGA group in terms of the impacts that the staff's recommended changes will have. And then just lastly, a quick update on COVID-19 from our weekly update from EOC and Public Health. We had 200 new cases today, countywide, bringing the total to 103,622. That's an increase of about 3,000 cases since February 16th. In Shafter, we have 52 new cases, bringing our total to 3,421. Last week's totals were 30 cases. The vaccine continues to be rolled out, and they have Wasco, Arvin, Rosemead, and the fairgrounds up and running. They have deployed their myturn.ca.gov website that people can go and log on and find out if they're eligible and sign up for where they may get the vaccine. And Mayor and Council, that concludes my report. I do have our Public Works Director who has an update on several other items as well. So Mike.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the Shafter City Council. Speaking on behalf of Public Works, I wanted to address a few programs and projects going on. For the annual brush program, that officially ended this past weekend, but realistically, the Public Works crews are going to be doing one last sweep through the city, which will last a couple more days. The SB 1383 discussion and action plan will certainly impact the future of the brush program. So we'll be sure to keep an eye on that as we continue to plan our action plan. The North Park, North Shafter park grant application is wrapping up. As you may recall, we had pretty extensive public outreach and citizen engagement over a period of a couple of months. The application is due next Friday. We hope to have it submitted well before that deadline. And the scope of work consists of $3.8 million in engineering, planning, and construction costs. And we covered a majority of the essential park features that the North Park, North Shafter residents were hoping to see out there. Finally, moving on to street infrastructure. Through Kern COG, the city will be participating in the development of what's referred to as a local roadway safety plan. This type of plan is now required to receive certain types of funding through the COG. For example, the HSIP program that was used to fund the guardrail project on Laredale Highway, from this point forward, we have to have a local roadway safety plan prepared ahead of time to qualify for future HSIP funding allocations. But beyond the funding, It'll be a valuable informational and planning document with respect to road planning. And it's going to be developed by a consultant under the direction of Kern COG staff, as well as other cities within the COG. So in addition to reviewing traffic and crash data, this particular plan development will rely somewhat on public outreach to prioritize projects and street improvements. And so we'll be certain to update you on the progress on the development of this plan, particularly when we get into the public outreach phase of the project. If you have any questions or concerns regarding this plan, I encourage you to reach out to me or the city manager. And that concludes Public Works comments.
Question, where does the funding come for the local roadway safety plan?
It's being funded through an allocation through the COG. I don't believe it's, I don't think we have a role in that
But is
particular.
it state, federal, or is it all, or local match? Or
I believe it's federal. I mean, most funding that is
Mostly federal?
that is distributed through but I'll let you know for sure. But I know that we don't, it's a joint, it's funding that the current COG staff secured, I believe through the FTIP to facilitate all of the member agencies having a plan so they're qualified for future roadway improvement project funding.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments? Any other staff?
Nothing further, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll have a motion then to recess for closed session. And we have two items under closed session. We have a conference with real property negotiators for County of Kern Chief Administrative Officer on an existing lease. And then the number two item is public employee performance evaluation for the city manager and city attorney.
Make a motion to move into closed session.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recess, and it is now 7:57. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I oppose no. Okay, we are recessed. All right, we're ready for the adjournment and report of closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier tonight, the city council recessed into closed session. The items are listed on the regular meeting agenda. There were 2 items on tonight's agenda: conference with real property negotiators concerning the property listed on the agenda, as well as public employee performance evaluation for the city manager and city attorney. With respect to both items, we have no reportable action.
Okay, now we'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.